The distant hum of the station's life support systems was the first thing Jack noticed as he stepped off the transport ship. Starpoint Station hung in the darkness of space like a metal flower, its 5 massive docking arms extending from a central hub. The transport had been uncomfortable, not designed for human anatomy. But Jack had endured worse. He adjusted the simple duffel bag on his shoulder and marched forward. The customs area was crowded with beings from across the galaxy. A 6-legged insectoid creature scuttled past him. A floating jellyfish-like alien drifted overhead, its translucent body glowing with internal bioluminescence. None of them made eye contact with Jack. The station officer, a thin, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes, flinched when Jack approached the checkpoint. "Purpose of visit?" the officer asked, voice trembling slightly. "Looking for work," Jack replied simply. The officer scanned Jack's identification chip and stared at the screen in front of him. Earth, a death world. The alien's upper eyes blinked rapidly. "We don't get many humans out here." Jack nodded. He was used to this reaction. Humans came from a planet that most galactic species considered a nightmare. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, dangerous predators, and toxic substances everywhere. Humans had evolved to survive it all, making them oddities in the wider universe. "Temporary visa approved," the officer said, clearly eager to move Jack along. "Keep to public areas only." Jack moved past the checkpoint into the main concourse of Starpoint Station. The artificial gravity was set slightly lighter than Earth standard, making his steps bouncy. The air smelled of strange foods, mechanical oils, and the unique scents of dozens of different species. He passed shops selling everything from exotic fruits to starship parts. Merchants called out to passing customers, but they fell silent when Jack walked by. Some pulled their children closer. Others simply stared. A group of tall, muscular aliens with ridged foreheads blocked his path. They wore matching uniforms with a symbol Jack didn't recognize. He stepped to go around them, but they shifted to stay in his way. "Deathworlder," one growled, the translator in Jack's ear making the aliens' clicks and whistles comprehensible. "Your kind is trouble." Jack said nothing. He'd been in enough fights to know when one was brewing, and he hadn't come here for that. He simply waited, hands loose at his sides, ready but not threatening. After a tense moment, the group parted, letting him pass with suspicious glares. He continued down the concourse until he spotted what he was looking for, a flickering sign that translated to the Cosmic Drift. It was the station's main social establishment, according to the information he'd gathered. If there was work to be found, someone there would know. The entrance was a circular doorway that irised open as he approached. Inside, the lighting was dim, with floating orbs of bioluminescent creatures providing most of the illumination. Dozens of different species sat at tables and along a curved bar, drinking from containers of all shapes and sizes. As Jack entered, a wave of silence spread from the door until the entire place was quiet. Every eye, ocular sensor, and sensory appendage turned toward him. He straightened his back slightly, an old military habit, and walked steadily toward the bar. The crowd parted before him, some beings pressing back against the walls to avoid contact. At the bar, a 4-armed alien with orange skin and a crest of feathers looked up at him with wide golden eyes. "What'll it be?" the bartender asked cautiously. "Whatever's safe for humans," Jack replied. "And some information, if you were selling that too." The bartender studied him for a moment, then reached for a bottle. "Information's free," the alien said, pouring a clear liquid into a sturdy glass. "Whether it's worth anything, that depends on what you do with it." Jack took the drink and turned to survey the room. The patrons had resumed their conversations, but many still watched him from the corners of their eyes. He had come to Starpoint Station looking for a job. He had no idea he would find so much more. The drink mocks placed before Jack smelled faintly of mint and burned slightly going down. Not unpleasant, but definitely not earth liquor. The 4-armed bartender kept a cautious distance as he wiped glasses with his lower set of hands. "So," Mock said, golden eyes darting around to see who might be listening. What brings a human all the way out to this forgotten corner of space? Jack took another sip before answering. Work. The kind that needs someone who can handle themselves. A harsh laugh erupted from a few seats down the bar. A gray-skinned alien with ridges running down its neck leaned toward them. Hear that, Mox? The Deathworlder thinks he's tough. Jack ignored the comment and kept his eyes on Mox. The bartender looked nervous. Not much honest work here these days, Mox said quietly. Not since the Vex took over. Vex? Jack asked. His question was answered by the sound of the bar's entrance opening. 3 large aliens entered, each wearing black body armor with a jagged red symbol on the chest. The tallest one had pale blue skin and tusks jutting from its lower jaw. The patrons of the Cosmic Drift suddenly became very interested in their drinks. Speak of the devils, Mox muttered, quickly moving away to serve the newcomers. Jack watched as the 3 Vex enforcers made their way through the bar. They stopped at each table, collecting small credit chips from the nervous patrons. Those who hesitated received a rough shove or a threat. It was an old game, protection money. Jack had seen it on a dozen worlds. When the enforcers reached a table where a small, trembling alien with feathery antennae sat, things got ugly. The creature seemed to be pleading, gesturing with thin arms. Already paid. Last week. Not due yet. Jack's translator picked up. The lead enforcer grabbed the alien by one of its antennae. New schedule. Pay now or lose your shop. Jack set his glass down and stood up. The movement drew eyes from around the bar, but he ignored them as he walked toward the table. Problem here? He asked, standing just outside the enforcer's reach. The tusked leader turned, looking Jack up and down with surprise and then amusement. Mind your business, Deathworlder. This doesn't concern you. I'm making it my business, Jack said. His voice remained calm, but he shifted his weight slightly, ready to move if needed. The enforcer released the small alien and fully turned to face Jack. You must be new here. Let me explain how things work on Starpoint. The Vex Collective runs this station. We collect what we're owed. Anyone who interferes. He patted the energy weapon at his hip. Jack noticed how the other patrons were watching with a mix of fear and something else. Hope, maybe. The small alien with the antennae had scurried away from the table. Where I come from, Jack said, bullies like you eventually get what's coming to them. The enforcer's hand moved toward his weapon, but Jack was faster. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the alien's wrist and twisted. There was a crack of breaking bone, and the enforcer howled. The weapon clattered to the floor. The other 2 Vex moved in, but Jack was ready. He kicked the first one's knee joint backward. Anatomy was different, but joints still broke the same way. The 3rd enforcer managed to land a punch on Jack's shoulder before Jack drove his fist into what he hoped was a vulnerable spot. He guessed right. The alien doubled over, gasping. The whole fight lasted less than 10 seconds. The bar was completely silent. The lead enforcer clutched his broken wrist, rage and pain in his eyes. You're dead, human. Drav will hear about this. Tell Drav I said hello, Jack replied. The enforcers limped out of the bar, dragging their wounded pride with them. As the door closed behind them, Jack turned to find every eye in the place fixed on him. Not with fear this time, but with amazement. Mox approached slowly, all 4 arms hanging loose at his sides. Friend, you have no idea what you've just started. Jack returned to his seat at the bar. Then you better fill me in while I finish my drink. Mox refilled Jack's glass with shaking hands. The rest of the bar had erupted into hushed conversations, with many patrons casting glances in Jack's direction. You just made enemies of the Vex Collective, Mox said, leaning across the bar. They control everything on this station. Trade, security, even the air recyclers. And their leader, Drav, doesn't forgive. Jack shrugged. Doesn't sound so different from gangs back on Earth. You don't understand, Mox continued, his feathered crest rising with agitation. Before the Vex came, Starpoint was a free trading post. Species from all over the galaxy would stop here. Good business, good people. His lower hands clenched into fists. 5 cycles ago, Drav and his crew moved in. They killed the station administrator and anyone who resisted. Now they take half of what everyone earns. The small alien with feathery antennae approached Jack cautiously. Up close, Jack could see that its skin was a pale green, almost translucent in the dim light of the bar. "Thank you, Earth being," it said in a high musical voice. "I am Pip. My family has owned our shop for 3 generations. The Vex would have taken everything." Jack nodded. "Glad I could help. But now they will come for you," Pip said, antennae drooping. "Many who stand against Drav do not live long." Before Jack could respond, the bar's entrance slid open again. The crowd immediately went silent. This time, a larger group of Vex enforcers entered, flanking a tall figure who could only be their leader. Drav was different from the others, sleeker, with dark purple skin and eyes that glowed a faint red. He wore no visible weapons, just a simple black uniform with the Vex symbol emblazoned in silver rather than red. He moved with the confidence of someone who rarely had to prove his power. The enforcers spread out, surrounding Jack, but keeping their distance. The memory of what had happened to their colleagues was clearly fresh in their minds. Drav stepped forward, studying Jack with those glowing eyes. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly soft. "So this is the human who thinks he can interfere with Vex business." He walked a slow circle around Jack. "Fascinating. I've heard stories about Deathworlders, but I've never met one." Jack remained seated, taking another sip of his drink. "Now you have. My enforcers tell me you're quite capable," Drav continued. "Breaking bones with your bare hands. Impressive." "They were hurting someone who couldn't fight back," Jack said simply. "Where I come from, that's not acceptable." Drav laughed, a sound like stones sliding against each other. "And where you come from matters here because I'm here now." The bar was so quiet that Jack could hear the station's distant machinery humming through the walls. Drav's eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. "You know," Drav said, "in many cultures, including my own, there are traditions for settling disputes, honorable ways to determine who is right." He spread his arms. "I am not unreasonable. If you wish to challenge Vex authority, there are proper channels." Mox made a warning sound, but Jack ignored it. "What kind of challenge?" Drav's smile widened. "Combat. One champion against another. If you win, the shop owner you defended will be free from our protection fees for 1 full cycle." "And if I lose?" Jack asked. "Then you leave Starpoint Station. Immediately, or in pieces. Your choice." Jack considered this. It was clearly a trap, but also an opportunity. Make it all the shops on the main concourse. Free for 1 cycle. Gasps echoed through the bar. Even Drav looked surprised for a moment before his composed expression returned. "You have courage, human. Very well. The stakes are set." Drav turned to leave, then paused. "The trial will be held tomorrow at station noon, in the central plaza. My champion will be ready." His glowing eyes fixed on Jack one last time. "I suggest you prepare to die." After Drav and his enforcers left, the bar exploded with voices. Mox reached across the counter and grabbed Jack's arm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" the bartender hissed. "Drav's champion is Krell, a Voraxian warrior. They're bred for combat." Jack finished his drink and stood up. "Guess I'd better get some rest, then." By station noon, the central plaza of Starpoint was packed with aliens of every size and shape. Word had spread quickly about the human who dared to challenge the Vex Collective. The normal market stalls had been cleared away, creating a rough circle in the center of the plaza. Jack arrived alone. He wore the same clothes as yesterday, simple and functional. He carried no weapons. A murmur ran through the crowd as he walked toward the circle. Some aliens reached out tentatively to touch him as he passed, as if for luck. "They believe in you," Mox said, appearing at Jack's side. "No one has stood against Drav in 2 cycles." "Tell me about this champion," Jack said, rolling his shoulders to loosen up. Mox's feathered crest flattened against his head. "Krell is Voraxian. They evolved on a high-gravity world with constant predators. Their skin is like armor, and they have regenerative abilities. No one has ever beaten Krell in combat." "There's always a first time," Jack replied. A hush fell over the crowd as the Vex contingent arrived. Drav led them, still wearing his simple black uniform. Behind him walked the largest alien Jack had yet seen on the station. Krell stood nearly 3 meters tall, with gray-green skin that looked like rough stone. The Voraxian's arms were as thick as Jack's torso, ending in 4-fingered hands with claws. Its head was almost all jaw, with rows of teeth visible even when its mouth was closed. Small black eyes glittered with predatory intelligence. "Having second thoughts, human," Drav called out, his voice carrying across the plaza. "You can still leave the station with your life." Jack stepped into the circle. "Let's get this over with." Drav smiled and gestured to Krell, who lumbered forward. The crowd pressed back, creating more space. "The rules are simple," Drav announced. "The combat continues until one fighter yields or can no longer continue. No weapons. No interference." He looked directly at Jack. "May the strongest survive." With that, Drav stepped back, and Krell attacked. The Voraxian moved with surprising speed for its size, charging straight at Jack. Jack waited until the last second before diving to the side. Krell's momentum carried it forward, but it recovered quickly, spinning around with a roar. Jack circled carefully, studying his opponent. The Voraxian was powerful but predictable, relying on strength rather than technique. Jack knew he couldn't match that strength. He needed to be smarter. Krell charged again. This time, Jack ducked under a massive swing and struck at the Voraxian's knee. It was like hitting concrete. Pain shot through Jack's hand, but he kept moving, staying out of Krell's reach. The crowd watched in silence as the dance continued. Jack landed strikes where he could, testing for weaknesses, but Krell seemed impervious to pain. Meanwhile, one glancing blow from the Voraxian sent Jack sprawling across the circle. Jack tasted blood as he got to his feet. His ribs ached where Krell had struck him. The Voraxian was advancing again, confident now. "Your species is weak," Krell rumbled, the first words it had spoken. "You cannot win." Jack wiped blood from his lip. "We'll see about that." He had noticed something during their exchanges. Krell breathed heavily after each charge, its chest expanding and contracting rapidly. The Voraxian was strong but had poor endurance. Jack just needed to last long enough. When Krell charged again, Jack didn't dodge completely. Instead, he took a glancing blow to his shoulder while striking at the Voraxian's throat. Krell staggered back, coughing. Jack pressed his advantage, moving in close where Krell's long arms were less effective. He struck repeatedly at the same spot on the Voraxian's throat, ignoring the pain as Krell's claws raked his back. The crowd was shouting now, a mixture of cheers and gasps. They had never seen anyone fight Krell this way, not with brute force, but with calculated precision. Krell was slowing down. Its breathing became labored, and its attacks grew wilder. Jack's own body screamed with pain, but he kept moving, kept striking. This was what made humans different, the ability to endure, to push through pain that would stop other species. With a final, desperate lunge, Krell overextended itself. Jack ducked under the Voraxian's arm and delivered a powerful upward strike to its jaw. Something cracked, and Krell crashed to the ground, shaking the entire plaza. The Voraxian tried to rise, then collapsed again, gasping for breath. Silence fell over the crowd. Even Drav seemed speechless. Jack stood over Krell, his chest heaving. "Do you yield?" he asked. The Voraxian's small eyes locked with Jack's. There was confusion there, and something like respect. Finally, Krell nodded once. The central plaza erupted in chaos. Jack winced as Pip applied a strange blue gel to the claw marks on his back. They sat in the back room of the small alien shop, where various medicinal herbs and compounds lined the shelves. "This will prevent infection," Pip explained, antennae twitching with concentration. "Your victory has changed everything, Earth being." Jack remained silent. The fight with Krell had taken more out of him than he showed. 3 ribs were probably cracked, and his left shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat. But he had won. And that was what mattered to the station's residents. The door slid open, and Mox entered, all 4 arms carrying different packages. "Food, medicine, and clean clothes," the bartender announced, setting everything down. "Gifts from the shopkeepers. No one can believe what you did." "What happened after I left?" Jack asked, gritting his teeth as Pip wrapped bandages around his torso. Mox's feathered crest rippled with excitement. Drav was furious, but he had to honor the agreement. All shops on the main concourse are free from protection fees for 1 cycle. The bartender leaned closer. "People are talking, Jack. For the first time in years, they're talking about standing up to the Vex." "That's dangerous talk," Jack warned. "Drav won't take this lying down." As if summoned by his words, Jack's communicator beeped. He tapped it, and a holographic message appeared. Text only. "Meet me. Docking Arm 3. Bay 17. Come alone." Mox read the message over Jack's shoulder and hissed with concern. "It's a trap. Drav wants you dead." "Probably," Jack agreed, standing up despite the pain. "But I need to know what he's planning." "You cannot go," Pip protested, antennae flat against their head. "The Vex do not honor their promises. Drav will kill you." Jack pulled on the clean shirt Mox had brought. "If he wanted me dead, he wouldn't invite me to a meeting." He checked the small energy knife concealed in his boot, the one weapon he'd kept hidden since arriving on the station. "I'll be careful." Docking Arm 3 was the least used section of Starpoint, home to storage bays and occasional smuggler ships. Jack moved cautiously through the dimly lit corridors, senses alert for any sign of ambush. Bay 17's door was unlocked. Jack paused before entering, listening for movement inside. Hearing nothing, he slipped through the door into darkness. Lights flickered on, revealing Drav standing alone in the center of the empty cargo bay. "Human," the Vex leader acknowledged with a slight nod. "You survived, Krell. Impressive." Jack stayed near the exit. "What do you want, Drav?" "To make you an offer." Drav's red eyes studied Jack carefully. "Join the Vex Collective. Someone with your particular talents could rise quickly through our ranks." Jack almost laughed. "You want me to work for you? After yesterday?" "Business is business," Drav replied smoothly. "You showed strength. I respect strength." "The answer is no." Drav's expression hardened. "Then consider this a warning. The agreement covers only the protection fees for 1 cycle. Nothing more. Cross me again, and I will destroy everything you care about on this station." "I just got here," Jack said. "I don't care about anything yet." "Yet you fought for Pitt's shop. For the merchants." Drav smiled coldly. "You humans are so transparent with your emotions. Already, they look to you as some kind of hero." Jack said nothing, but he knew Drav was right. The way people had touched him for luck, the gifts from the shopkeepers, he had become a symbol without intending to. Drav turned to leave, then paused. "1 cycle, human. Enjoy your small victory while it lasts." After Drav left, Jack remained in the cargo bay, thinking. He had come to Starpoint looking for work, not a cause, not a fight, but something about the desperate hope in the eyes of Pip, Mox, and the others pulled at him. When Jack returned to the main concourse, he found a crowd waiting for him. Word of Drav's meeting had spread, and the station's residents wanted reassurance. "What did he say?" Mox asked, pushing through the crowd. "He offered me a job," Jack said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I turned him down." A cheer went up from the gathered aliens. But Jack raised his hand for silence. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "This isn't over. One victory doesn't change anything. Drav and the Vex still control this station. Then we fight them." Someone shouted from the back. Jack shook his head. "Not yet. Not like this. We need a plan." As the crowd dispersed, muttering with new energy and purpose, Jack realized that he had said we. Somehow, in just 2 days, he had become part of something larger than himself. And Drav was right about one thing. The Deathworlder now had something to care about. 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Jack's wounds healed as he put his plan into motion. The back room of Pitt's shop became their headquarters, where Jack met with representatives from every section of the station. The Vex control the main computer systems and the security drones, Jack explained to the gathered group. A crude map of Starpoint Station glowed in the center of the room. "But we have something they don't." "What's that?" asked Trill, a maintenance worker with 6 eyes and metallic skin. "Numbers," Jack replied. "And knowledge of the station's systems that they don't have." Trill nodded eagerly. "I've worked in the recycling ducts for 20 cycles. I know paths the Vex have never seen." Others spoke up, each offering their unique skills or knowledge. A plan began to take shape, not a direct confrontation, but something more subtle. Meanwhile, Jack had been training small groups in basic self-defense. Not how to fight for actions like Krell, but how to work together against the average Vex enforcer. Humans had millennia of experience fighting as units rather than individuals, a concept foreign to many alien species. "Move as one," Jack instructed as a group practiced surrounding a single target. "Cover each other's weaknesses. No heroes, just teamwork." Word of their preparations inevitably reached Drav. Vex patrols increased, and random searches became common. But Jack had anticipated this, using the increased Vex presence to map their patrol routes and communication patterns. The night before their planned action, Mox found Jack alone on an observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Nervous?" the bartender asked, settling beside him. Jack shook his head. "Just thinking about how I ended up here. I came looking for a job, not a revolution." "Sometimes the universe has other plans," Mox said, his feathered crest rippling gently. "You know, there's a saying among my people, the right being in the wrong place can change everything." "Let's hope it changes for the better," Jack replied. Station dawn came, and with it their signal to begin. Trill and his maintenance crew cut power to specific sections of Starpoint, creating a cascade of system failures that confused the Vex security network. Emergency protocols activated, sending Vex enforcers rushing to protect key areas. But Jack's forces were already moving. Using maintenance tunnels and service corridors, they bypassed the main Vex positions. Small groups of station residents emerged behind Vex patrols, overwhelming them with sheer numbers before they could respond. In the cosmic drift, Mox gave the signal. The bar's patrons, many of whom were off-duty Vex personnel, suddenly found themselves surrounded by determined civilians armed with makeshift weapons. Jack led the main assault on the security hub, where Drav coordinated the Vex response. They encountered heavy resistance. Drav had kept his best fighters close. "Push forward," Jack shouted as energy bolts sizzled past his head. He ducked behind a fallen console, then popped up to fire the weapon he'd taken from a fallen Vex enforcer. The fighting was intense but brief. Jack's training had worked. The station residents moved as coordinated units, supporting each other and adapting to Vex tactics. They had surprise on their side, and something more important, desperation born from years of oppression. When Jack finally broke through to the command center, he found Drav alone, standing calmly behind a control console. "I underestimated you, human," Drav said, his red eyes glowing brightly. "A mistake I won't repeat." With a lightning-fast movement, Drav drew a concealed weapon. But Jack was faster, diving forward and tackling the Vex leader to the ground. They grappled briefly before Jack pinned Drav, pressing the captured energy weapon against his throat. "It's over," Jack said, breathing hard. "Call off your forces." For a moment, Drav's eyes blazed with hatred. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. "You've won this battle, Deathworlder. But the Vex Collective stretches across 3 systems. They will come looking for me." "Let them come," Jack replied. "Starpoint will be ready." Throughout the station, the fighting died down as word spread of Drav's capture. In less than 2 hours, the revolution that had seemed impossible for years was complete. The Vex were rounded up and secured in cargo bays, awaiting transport off-station. In the central plaza, where Jack had fought Krell weeks earlier, the station's residents gathered in celebration. When Jack emerged with a bound Drav, a deafening cheer erupted. Tip approached, antennae quivering with emotion. "What happens now, Earth being?" Jack looked out at the sea of alien faces, hopeful, expectant, all looking to him for answers. "Now," he said, "we rebuild." 1 month after the uprising, Starpoint Station hummed with new energy. The main concourse, once dim and dangerous, now blazed with light and bustled with activity. Merchants called to passing customers without fear, and laughter echoed down corridors that had known only hushed whispers for years. In what had once been Drav's command center, Jack sat at a large table surrounded by representatives from every section of the station. They called it the council chamber now, though Jack had resisted any grander name. "The repairs to Docking Arm 2 are complete," reported Trill, who now oversaw station maintenance. "And we've received requests from 3 new trading vessels to dock next week." "Word is spreading," Mox added. His feathered crest had grown brighter since the Vex were driven out. "Merchants who avoided Starpoint for years are returning. They call it the Free Station now." Jack turned to see Mox approaching, carrying 2 glasses of the mint-scented drink from their first meeting. "Council meeting's getting to you?" the bartender asked, handing Jack a glass. Jack accepted the drink with a small smile. "I'm not cut out for politics. Yet you led a revolution and now run a space station." Mox settled beside him. Not bad for someone who just wanted a job. They drank in companionable silence for a moment. "The election preparations are complete," Mox said finally. "Voting begins tomorrow. The council system you designed will take over within a week." Jack nodded. This had been his goal from the beginning, to establish a governing system that represented all station residents, then step aside. No more warlords, no more dictators. "What will you do after?" Mox asked. "There's talk of naming you permanent security chief." "I don't know," Jack admitted. "I never planned to stay this long." But the thought of leaving Starpoint, of never seeing Pip's antennae twitch with excitement or hearing Mox's stories behind the bar, felt strangely painful. Somewhere along the way, this odd collection of aliens had become something like family. The next morning, the station's first free election began. Jack cast his vote early, then spent the day helping where needed, as he always did. By evening, the results were clear. A diverse council of 7 representatives had been chosen, with Mox among them. At the celebration in the central plaza, the new head counselor, a wise old being named Jor, called Jack forward. "Starpoint Station owes you a debt we can never repay," Jor announced, voice amplified for all to hear. "You freed us from tyranny and taught us to stand together despite our differences." The crowd cheered, and Jack felt his face grow warm with embarrassment. "Will you address the station, Warlord?" Jor asked. Jack stepped forward, looking out at the sea of alien faces, so different from his own, yet now so familiar. "I'm not a warlord," he began. "I'm just someone who believes that everyone deserves to live free from fear. What happened here wasn't about me. It was about all of you finding the courage to stand together." He paused, suddenly certain of what he wanted to say. "Starpoint isn't just a station anymore. It's a symbol of what different species can accomplish when they work together. Protect that. Remember it when times get hard again. And they will. But as long as you face those challenges united, there's nothing you can't overcome." As the crowd erupted in cheers, Jack knew he had found something he hadn't realized he was looking for, not just a job, but a home among the stars.